Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, what we have here is a primary hybrid, and it's a cross between pantherina and cornu cervi. And this video, I think I'm gonna talk a little bit about this orchid's special characteristics, as well as some of the things that I have observed from owning two cornu cervi type orchids, as well as talk a little bit about the semi-hydro method that this orchid is in. So for this type of orchid, I think for most people, you've seen cornu cervi, the red variety, and that is the most common and most popular variety. And then the marking of this orchid likely is coming from the pantherina parent. Although cornu cervi, certain selected variety does also have minor marking, but based on my research, pantherina actually would have more distinct marking throughout most of its varieties. And I don't know if you know this, at least in the Chinese community, for this cornu cervi type orchid, it actually has a very interesting nickname, which I think you probably likely will agree with as well. Its nickname, or its subcategory, is called Antler Orchid, as in deer's antlers. So I think that name, well, not I think, I know for sure, because I've gone online to do some research and read some people's blogs, a few people's blogs, and just some discussion board talking about the name and how this genre or subcategory got the name. It's because of its flower spike. Its flower spike is a little flatter. It's not like typical Phalaenopsis flower spike that's like round, long. It's flat. Right? So because of it looks like deer's antlers, so they gave this subcategory a name, a nickname, Antler's Orchid, Antler Orchid. I found it pretty cute, and I do like the way the flower spike look, and that's actually one of the main reasons why I even wanted to own a cornu cervi type orchid. So for this type of orchid, I have two. The other one is also a cornu cervi hybrid, but that one is crossed with something else. And I've featured it, I've talked about it in my channel before, but that one is more on the full dark red variety, and this one has markings. And then based on my research, I also read that this type of orchid, cornu cervi type orchid, is a lowland orchid in Southeast Asia originally. So this orchid really loves humidity and can tolerate higher temperature, but this orchid also really enjoys its roots being dry. So you do need to provide wet condition, wet roots, but then probably allow longer dry period than you would with other orchids in your collection. For this one, also, for this type of orchid, I noticed that it keeps its flower spike indefinitely. So for a specimen size, you can actually have quite a few flower spikes. At least for me, every year, this orchid would grow a new spike, at least one, and then on its existing spikes, it would, produce multiple secondary spikes. So for this one, I've had this one for just under 3 years, and every year it has grown out a new spike and then multiple secondary spikes. So I find it very interesting, because sometimes for sequential bloomers, I'm talking about Phalaenopsis orchids, sequential bloomers, sometimes they would retire their older spikes in, like 2 years. So for me, I think this orchid keeps its spike for a lot longer than other Phalaenopsis orchid subgroups. This one though doesn't have any fragrance, and I think for cornu cervi type orchid does not have any fragrance typically. I'm yet to see a cornu cervi orchid or cornu cervi cross with any fragrance being advertised. Not sure if you own any. If you do, please let me know, because I think these types of orchids is known for its flower shape, which is quite different from regular Phalaenopsis orchids, and it has a much wider, distinct look of lips. And then obviously the spike is looking very flat, very different from typical Phalaenopsis orchid spike. But other than that, it's not known for its fragrance. And within this subcategory, I guess, either it's pantherina with markings or cornu cervi with solid color, red color. And I know the flava or the alba form, or the flava form is like bright yellow. Other than that, there aren't that many variations. And maybe that's why I haven't seen people with a huge collection of cornu cervi type orchids. Unlike Phalaenopsis orchids, there's so many different type of species that are so different that you can have many of in a collection. And for me, the same thing. I only have 2 cornu cervi cross, right? So it's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like Tolumnia. I only have 4 Tolumnias in my collection, and I think it's because, well, the leaves, they all look similar, they all look the same. And yes, the flowers can have endless varieties. However, once you have a few, you kind of have a sense of what they are like, then you stop buying more of the same similarities. Not sure if you agree with me, but at least that's my opinion. Now let's talk a little bit about semi-hydro. This orchid is growing in semi-hydro. And remember I said this orchid likes having its roots being dried for a while. So I think I got a little lucky with this orchid being in semi-hydro. When I first got this orchid, it was a much smaller near bloom size plant. So it didn't have that many roots, but I wanted to try out semi-hydro, not knowing that this orchid actually prefers some dryness to its roots. So I put this one in semi-hydro, but it never actually had any adjustment issues or the need for adjustments, meaning there's no root rot. I didn't have to repot it. So I think I got lucky with this one. But another aspect of this orchid type is it's just really hardy. It's not fussy. It's really easy to take care of. So I think if you give it more wet condition, it'll tolerate it. After all, it's originated from Southeast Asia, so high humidity, high temperature. So I think this orchid is okay in semi-hydro, and obviously it has grown really well. Lots of area roots as well, lots of roots in the media too. It's not fussy, but I do have to let you know this orchid does like fertilizer. I noticed that it does grow faster and better when I give it higher concentration of fertilizer, for example 50% strength instead of 25%. 1 year I did quarter strength, it grew okay, and then for the next year I actually increased its dosage, and I even gave it additional time release fertilizer, and it actually just took off and grew much bigger leaves, and it also produced a lot more secondary spikes. But one thing I think I did right with this orchid, because I look at the size of its roots, I knew it would have thicker roots than other orchids. So when I chose the ratio, when I was choosing the ratio between big and small pebbles, I used 2 parts bigger pebble, so 2 parts hydrocorn versus 1 part manto clay, and that seems to work really well in semi-hydro for this particular orchid. So I thought I would share that with you. And other than that, I think this orchid is super hardy. Yes, it doesn't look too exciting if you're not into this whole marking thing on flowers, but I really think that it has a very interesting looking spikes, which, you know, is why it's called Antler Orchid in the Chinese community. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave any comment in down below, and I will get back to you when I can. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!